fam, welcome back to our channel. Today's topic is raw feeding for ferrets. I do have a lot of videos on this topic. Feel free to surf through my raw feeding playlist. But today I'll just be chit-chatting and going a little bit more in depth on certain aspects of feeding raw for ferrets. First, do not forget to hit that like button, subscribe, consider becoming a member on the channel, and joining our ferret advocacy group. If you're new here, hi, my name is Bryn. This is Momo. I'm a animal care content creator here on YouTube with over 15 years of experience in general animal care. Look at your legs! Been studying animal nutrition for over a year now. It has become my passion and something that I want to pursue, but I also have interest in the holistic raising and maintaining of companion animals. I do run a program dedicated to helping you guys switch your ferrets onto a raw diet from a processed diet. I also have a comprehensive meal plan service where I formulate customized meal plans for your ferrets, and I also have an extensive raw feeding ebook. You can check all that out on my website. If you are interested in learning more about the pet food industry, we will be briefly discussing it today, but I do have a completely dedicated video on that topic that you can watch above. So let's first talk a little bit about the pet food industry, how it started, how it is today, and why I personally made the choice to cut that out of my animals' diets. Kibble was invented around 160 years ago, so it hasn't been around that long. It was created purely out of convenience. At that time, and for a millennia beforehand, we had been feeding our carnivores meats off the table, scraps, extras from the hunt, or we were simply feeding their ancestral diet to begin with. Ancestral meaning what their ancestors would eat in the wild. So for the dog, it would be the wolf, or the cat would be a big cat, ferrets would be polecat. Convenience comes at a cost though, as it usually does for most things. To make a food mimic the natural diet of a carnivore in the wild, it has to be purely animal matter, animal product, with maybe a little bit of partially digested vegetable plant matter, which is what would be found in their prey's digestive tract if they were to eat the whole animal. Truth is, you can't make a kibble contain only animal product and have it keep its shape. There must be some sort of starch, binders, and fillers to help it keep that round, hard kibble shape, as well as to keep it stable on the shelf for a long period of time. You can kind of do this with air-dried and freeze-dried raw foods, but most people do not want to go out of their way to spend that much money. Kibble undergoes extensive cooking processes, heating processes, to make it the way that it is in the bag. But this process denatures practically every nutrient that would be found in the meats. So the manufacturers have to go back in and add something called a synthetic premix, synthetic vitamins and minerals, to make the diet complete. Synthetic nutrition is greatly understudied. We don't even really have the knowledge base yet if our companion animals are able to reap all of the benefits from synthetic vitamins and minerals. We just don't know this yet. This is also called biological availability. They could simply be of no value whatsoever, or maybe some are available, some are not. We just don't have that knowledge yet. Animal foods have very poor regulations, unlike with human food, making roadkill, dead zoo animals, even euthanized dogs and cats allowable in our pets' food. Companies have the choice of either paying low costs for the food and selling it at a decent price point, or spending high for high quality products and ingredients for the food and selling it at a high price point. Hint, most customers do not want to spend a lot of money on their pets' food, so most companies go the route of spending little and selling it at a decent price point. Companies then learn they could save even more money by replacing the animal product, that quality animal product, in the food with plant matter instead. This would result in a cheaper product and more sales for the company. And there wasn't really any research at the time that proved the negative effects of plant proteins, plant ingredients, on the stomach and body of a carnivore. So they thought, you know, why not? We can cut costs this way, let's just do it. Of course, nowadays we do have the studies that prove the harmful effects of grain-based diets and vegetable-based diets on the body of a carnivore, yet most companies still continue to do what they've been doing for years. Quality continued to decline as more companies companies realized all the corners that they could cut to minimize costs, maximize profit, and gain traction in the pet world. Clever marketing tactics were used on the packaging to draw you in. They would use wolves, big cats, running, playing. They'd use the words natural, healthy, even though regulations state that they can say these claims without having any evidence that backs it up. So any food that says it's healthy or natural doesn't actually have to be. Artificial colorings are used to make the food more aesthetically pleasing to pet parents, even though we know that many artificial dyes are carcinogenic. The increase in crops used in pet foods has also been linked to a variety of issues, from glyphosates and mycotoxins, and also the biggest recall case in pet food history. In 2007, the largest pet food recall case occurred, where well over 8,500-ish pets died all over the world due to contaminated kibble, and you can learn more about this in the Pet Food documentary, along with my Truth About Pet Food video here on YouTube. This was purposely added by pet food manufacturers to the wheat gluten in the food to increase overall protein percentage. Thousands of animals died because people chose to cut corners. Let that sink in. And this isn't something that is exclusive to this event, to 2007. This is something that I firmly believe is still happening today, especially because we are still finding contaminated wheat gluten in foods recently. Companies are still choosing plant ingredients and starch, potatoes, peas in their foods instead of quality animal product, quality animal organs, because they want to cut costs. But wait, your food contains animal product and no plant ingredients, you may not be off the hook. The meats you see in pet foods are vastly different from quality animal meats. Most of the time it's meat meals and meat byproducts. These can be from any animal. That dead deer you saw on the side of the road on your way home, that dead monkey at the zoo, euthanized pets at the shelter. If you don't believe me that euthanized dogs and cats are being used in pet food, we don't have a confirmation of this. However, the FDA has found euthanasia drugs in multiple pet foods, and it's still an issue today, and we don't really have an explanation. This is a euthanasia drug commonly used at zoos, shelters, and the transport actually used to pick up these dead animals at shelters and zoos are owned by the same people who have rendering facilities.
President of the Association of Feed Control Officials, a group made up of North American agriculture and animal feed specialists. AFCO writes ingredient definitions and suggests nutritional guidelines for pet food makers.
Pet food industry.
Pendel says he's not aware of any written law or regulation at any level specifically prohibiting the use of rendered products which contain dead cats and dogs.
Aesthetically, it may not be acceptable, but nutritionally, it's still protein.
Can we tell what's in pet food just by looking at the label?
There's no way to really tell that, because if the ingredient says meat and bone meal, you don't know if that's cattle or sheep or horse or fluffy.
This is one of the many reasons why we don't feed kibble, and unfortunately raw feeders are constantly ostracized in the pet community by vet offices, online forums, because people don't want to hear what we have to say. We are labeled as fear mongers. We use scare tactics to scare you guys into feeding a better diet for your animals, when the truth is, in humans, processed foods are linked to so many issues. And when you go to the doctor, what is the first thing that they tell you to do? Adjust your diet, have more fresh whole foods in your diet, and cut out the processed junk food. But for some reason, this is totally different with pets. We are being told to feed more processed foods, to not feed your pets whole raw foods because it is bad for them. They're gonna get salmonella, bacteria, it's gonna make you sick. Doesn't really make any sense to me. Nutrition is the foundation for healthy pets and humans. For some reason, this is not a connection that many people make, and probably the main reason why obesity rates are so high in both animals and humans. I am sorry if it offends some of you that I personally made the decision to choose healthy whole foods over processed foods fueled by corporate greed. I don't know what else to tell you. I will be continuing to make these videos, and I hate having to do disclaimers on all of my raw feeding videos because so many people hate these videos. I get messages and emails after I make raw feeding videos saying, how could you say this, you know, people have been feeding ferrets dry food for years with no problems. And it's like, really? With no problems? When you look at the amount of disease, insulinoma, and issues that occur in ferrets over time, and it's more popular here than it is in other countries where raw is more commonly fed. It's also not an issue with wild polecats that eat whole prey diets in the wild. I mean, come on guys, we have to start making connections to nutrition and health. Anyways, that was just my spiel, but next we are going to be talking about terms in the raw feeding community. I know that the many terms can be very confusing, but once you get the basics down, it's really simple. Let me get the record straight. All of these terms that I'm about to list mean exactly the same thing. You've got biologically appropriate, species appropriate, primordial diet, ancestral diet, natural diet. This all essentially means, you know, their diet in the wild. Species appropriate and biologically appropriate means a diet plan created by Mother Nature for that specific species. For ferrets, this is a diet of mostly animal product and a little bit of fish. You've got the prey model plan. This is something that you may hear a lot in the ferret and cat community. So for prey model, basically we're just trying to replicate a whole prey animal as best we can. You can easily do this by feeding whole prey animals like whole prey mice and rats and rabbit. So many of us follow the route of frankenprey. So this is just using different parts of the animal throughout the week, different animals, to kind of make a whole animal in the end. And this is a great diet choice for those who don't have a lot of freezer space. To actually formulate a nutritionally adequate meal plan for ferrets, we must look at the whole prey. We generally follow the whole prey ratio rule of 80% meat, 10% bone, and 10% offal. Though over the past year and in my recent studies and research in raw feeding, I've kind of strayed away from those percentages a little bit and became less strict, and instead chosen a more individual approach for each ferret, because in the wild they wouldn't always get whole animals. I think it's good to use as a base guideline, but if you're strictly gonna follow this, there might be deficiencies in your pet's diet. Many feeders fall into this sort of obsession with percentages, getting the fat and the protein percent completely accurate, making sure that it's exactly 80% meat and exactly 10% bone that their animals are getting, which I get. You want to be completely accurate with your pets, but unfortunately this is never really going to be the case. In truth, we don't know all that much about pet nutrition even now. We are using our best guesses. We are trying to mimic what they eat in the wild best we can. Though the plan that we have been following for many years now seems to be working for us. So I know it can be kind of scary to think that we don't 100% know what we're doing when we take our ferret's diet into our own hands, but the truth is this applies for kibble as well. This is why I've dropped the word balance when talking about raw feeding, and instead I use nutritionally adequate, because it will never be 100% balanced unless we are actually feeding exactly what the polecat would eat in the exact amounts and the exact ways that they would eat it. So let's take a look at the European polecat. What does their diet look like? The diet of the polecat varies based on their territory. According to a study done on diets of European polecat, rodents and amphibians are common food items in all regions. Polecats in the Mediterranean eat mostly rabbits. In Switzerland and Poland, they eat mostly amphibians. In Poland, frogs comprised 60% and 90% of polecat total food biomass in summer and winter. They appeared to only eat rodents when frogs were not available. Have a clear preference of frogs in their diet, which is interesting. There's also evidence of rodent consumption mostly in the winter months. 99 stomachs of polecats were collected by researchers from past polecats in the wild, and 14 contained only liquid and some undigested flesh. 10 contained plant matter, which is interesting, probably during consumption when eating on the ground, along with digestive tracts in certain animals. Mammals were the most frequently identified prey. Amphibians were the second most frequently identified prey group, mostly frogs. Birds, fishes, and invertebrates comprised 7%, 4%, and 1% frequency of occurrence, 1 instance of carrion was found. So what does this mean for our domestic ferrets? It means that they enjoy mostly animal product from mammals, some amphibians, small birds, and rodents, and a little bit of fish. It's great if you can feed your ferrets sustainably sourced frogs and rabbits, but unfortunately these two proteins are very, very hard to come by. Mostly what this tells us is that polecats enjoy a high protein, low fat diet in the wild, so let's try our best to feed our ferrets a high protein, low fat diet. This is why you should shoot for grass-fed, grass-finished, free-range meats, because these will best replicate that. Factory farmed meats, animals raised on grains, often have a higher levels of fat and lower levels of protein, the opposite of what we want. Though if factory farmed animals is all that you can source at the moment, at this time, that is perfectly fine, and the diet will still be much better than dry food. According to the prey model, about 80% of the total diet should be boneless meat. Now keep in mind that this meat, most of this percentage, if not nearly all of it, should be meat off of the bone. So this is raw meaty bone. I also like to feed a few ounces of low mercury fish in the week to help balance fatty acids, especially when feeding a lot of factory farmed animals. And this is followed by raw meaty bone, the component in the diet that we feed the most of. Raw meaty bones contain nearly every nutrient a ferret needs, making it a complete food source. The diet will be comprised of primarily raw meaty bone, along with a couple offal items in the week to help round out the diet, make it nutritionally adequate for them. Not only that, it also has a large role in oral health. If your ferrets are not eating enough raw meaty bone, or if they're eating ground up raw with too small of bone, odds are they will have a lot of plaque buildup. Out of the 14 meals in the week that I feed my ferrets, which is twice a day, 9 to 10 of those meals for my ferrets are just raw meaty bone. The best choices for raw meaty bone for ferrets are game hen, chicken, other poultry like duck, frogs, rabbits, quail, and so on. Bones from pigs, cows, sheep are much too dense for ferrets and should not be fed, along with those processed dried bones that you see in pet stores, along with marrow bones. Those should not be fed either. The bones should be completely edible for them. Offal, or organs, is the next component in the raw diet. Heart meat is also included in this category, even though we do not feed it as organ. It's part of the 80% meat portion in the diet. I aim for about 10% heart meat for my ferrets, and the rest of it is liver and other secreting organs like kidneys, brain, thymus. Offal is loaded in nutrients and can create some loose poops for your ferrets, so make sure to spread out these meals. I do 2 meals of offal in the week with heart, liver, and other secreting organ. I feed this in a blended soup with other extras like bone broth, green tripe. I also alternate the offal monthly, so like 1 month I will do liver, spleen, and kidney. Next month might be liver, brains, and thymus. Bring your ferrets back into nature in the comfort of your own home. You can provide a safe and secure dark feeding den for them to stash their meat in and eat. Place their food bowls in different areas of the home daily. This helps keep their brains going because prey in the wild would not always be in the same spots. I like to feed twice a day. I find that this really suits their energy levels well. If you have a ferret with insulinoma, you might want to feed 2 to 3 times a day. All depends on the individual ferret. A few times a week, let your ferrets dig in safe dirt. You can do this in a large container. In the wild, polecats eat off of the ground, so they actually consume some of that soil, and in that soil are helpful probiotics, or good bacteria. This isn't me saying you should feed your ferrets dirt, but it's helpful to get them to play in it and then they clean themselves after. Make sure the dirt is safe and not treated with anything. As far as actually switching your ferrets onto a raw diet, this can be pretty tricky, especially since ferrets are so picky. That is why I created my mentoring program, and the information for that will be below. I have all the tips and tricks. I have helped switch probably over 100 ferrets by now, so I think I know a thing or two about switching stubborn ferrets. If you're looking to further your knowledge into raw feeding, I do have a couple books that I have been enjoying that I'm going to share with you today. First one is one of my favorites. I'm in the middle of reading it right now. This is by Dr. Tom Lonsdale. This is his book, Raw Meaty Bones. This guy is so cool. I love that he's all about, bringing your animals back into nature in a safe way and in ways that you can do in your own home. And I like like that he puts such an emphasis on raw meaty bones. I really like this book so far. It's a nice big thick one. He also has a more basic one called Work Wonders, Feed Your Dog Raw Meaty Bones. This is a much shorter book, so it's very to the point, but I actually do have a review on this book on my website if you're interested, but I did like this one as well. We have The Barf Diet by Dr. Ian Billinghurst. This one is really good too. It is a very basic overview into barf feeding for dogs and cats. Now keep in mind, I'm not a huge supporter of barf for ferrets because it does include some plant matter. I don't think that ferrets need plants to thrive, but just, you know, keep that in mind. I also have two books by Timothy Schultz. I have Natural Nutrition for Dogs and Cats. I really liked this book. And then also she has Natural Nutrition for Cats. So as we know, raw feeding for cats will be very similar to raw feeding for ferrets. They have the exact requirements for essential amino acids. There's just a couple tweaks that we do with ferret diets compared to cats, but this is a good one as well. I also recommend looking into a couple raw feeding powerhouses in the community. You have Dr. Karen Becker, you've got Dr. Ian Billinghurst, Dr. Tom Lonsdale, Dr. Nick Thompson. They all have websites and they can all be found in my Ferret Care archive in the description of this video. Well guys, that is all that I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this raw feeding chit chat today, and if you have any video suggestions, please do leave them below because I'm running out of content. Thank you guys again for sticking around until the end of this video, and thank you to our members of the channel. I will see you guys in my next video. All right, bye.